Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I see the participant number keeps going up. We've got folks trickling in, but we'll go ahead and get started just with a welcome and quick introduction so we can keep most of our time for the content today. I am Rachel McKinney. I'm the Senior Director of Culture and Capacity Building at Interact for Health. I'm really happy that all of you could join us today. We started talking about this topic and trying to put together this webinar probably almost 6 months ago or more. We had requests from several of our grantee partners um, throughout the last year or so as folks had a lot of upheaval around their funding. And we started looking for some partners that could really help share some tools and resources for our grantee partners and the nonprofit community as a whole. It's been a pleasure to work with Ashley Roundtree over the last few years for our sustainability consultant program. And when we shared this idea with them, they were happy to reach out to some of their partners to get this together for today's webinar. So I'm really happy that Carol and Robin and Lisa could join us. I'm going to pass it off to Lisa Resnick with Ashley Roundtree real quick, and then we'll get started.
Thank you, Rachel. I am Lisa Resnick. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and partner at Ashley Roundtree, and so happy to be here today. Just wanted to give you a little background, a very brief background on Ashley Roundtree. As Rachel said, we've been enjoying working with so many of their partners there in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area, and we are located in Louisville, Kentucky. But our reach is regional and national, to be honest. And we are a group of about 12 employees and 45 contractors that represent a wide variety of services. We are here to serve the nonprofits, help the nonprofits in fundraising, whether it be capital campaign, studies, campaign counsel, general fundraising, anything from annual giving, major gifts to planned giving, governance issues, and as you're going to hear today, grants. We do grant writing, research, and administration. We have a talent and leadership division that does searches and succession planning and interim staffing and executive coaching. And we have a strategic planning group as well as a marketing group. So as you can see, we are very full service. It's probably easier what to say what we don't do, but we are here for the nonprofits and excited to help the nonprofit community thrive. So with that quick introduction, I am going to now introduce Carol Buckhout, who is one of our amazing grant writers and researchers and everything. She does everything with administration. She's worked for 25 years in the healthcare, education, social service sector, and as well as a small foundation. And she has been working very closely with us with Northern Kentucky. She oversees grant management for an organization in Northern Kentucky and just does amazing work. Robin Gibney, Dr. Robin Gibney is we are fortunate to have her join the team in 2020 after she retired as the director of grants for the Cincinnati Museum Center. And she has a long, illustrious career. I'm not going to go through everything, Robin, but she did serve on the faculty. At the time was called the Center for Philanthropy. It's now, as you know it, the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And so she served there on the faculty for a period of time. And with that, I'm going to let them get to the fun part, what you are here for. And so, Carol and Robin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And we're glad everyone could join us today. I believe, as you read when you signed up for the webinar, today we're going to be talking about national funding, but we're going to have four basic goals for this webinar. The first one is just talking about the basics of nonprofits and making sure you get those right so that you have a firm base for which to go forth and seek national funding. Then we're going to talk about how you can sort of set your organization apart, figure out what makes you unique and how you can present that to funders. And then look at how to cultivate strong partnerships with other organizations and potential national foundations as a source of sustainability. And then the key elements for an impactful and sustainable project. And the whole, at the end, wrapping it up with a compelling and data-driven case for support. Before we jump into some of that content, though, we did have some polling questions. And oops, do we need to go back?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. If you could just let us know in the chat, perhaps, we'd as just sort of a baseline for us to make sure we answer all your questions. Has your organization ever received a grant from a private national funder? If you could enter your question there, your response there, and then our second question is...
Oh, question 3 popped up on my screen, Carol. I don't know what happened to 1 and 2.
Oh.
Did everybody else get 1 and 2?
Okay. Well, let's just... I think the only Zoom that we have is a short response at the end. But the first question, has your organization... Oh, now we have
Now
question
2 showed
2.
up. Now 2 showed up.
I'm not sure how to... Let's just go with question number 2, because it does bear into the first goal of the webinar, which is doing the basics. What is your organization's seal of transparency on Candid? Is it platinum, gold, silver, bronze, or you don't know? But those are good things to sort of manage as you prepare to present yourself to national funders. Do we need more time for that, or can we move? Okay. And then the third question popped up for, oh, okay, good. 13% platinum, 9% gold, and 78% not sure. So don't know. So you may want to look up your seal of transparency and start working your way through that process of adding information to that, so that when funders are looking at you, they can see your seal of transparency. And then the third is how many individuals in your organization are responsible for writing grants. I think that was the question that popped up first. If we can get back to that polling question.
Yeah, I have that 100% people answered the question, but I don't know what the
Oh,
range
no,
is.
what the answer is. So,
yeah. Well, maybe we haven't passed our how to do a Zoom poll test. Thanks for being patient with us.
Okay.
I do think, though, I mean, one of the things we learned is that a number of you don't know what your seal of transparency is on Candid. And perhaps that's something that we could talk about at the end if people have questions.
We'd be glad to do that. And we have some other resources that we'll be sharing throughout the webinar, and we can go, that will be one of them that we can talk about. Okay, so we're talking again about the basics. Does your organization have a compelling mission and vision statement? And you craft a compelling elevator pitch? Those are all things you're going to need to know as you start to build relationships with prospective funders and preparing to write an application. Can you measure program objectives that are related and advance your mission? That's a thing that you just need to first things first. Do you have a strong digital presence through your website and social media? Have you looked at your website for navigation issues? Are you sure that it's up to date? It's interesting, but more and more funders are following nonprofits through their social media, through their website presence. So as soon as you're on their radar screen, you want to be sure that you're putting your best foot forward. Making sure that your social media posts, your website information are all up to date and will showcase your work in the best possible way. And do you have audited financials? If you don't, there may be a really good reason for that, but you're going to have to be sure that if you don't have 990s or audited financials, that you can explain to potential funders why you don't. It may be that you have a fiscal sponsorship or something else that's perfectly all right. The funders are going to be glad to know that, but you just need to be sure you have a way to communicate that to a prospective funder. And then, of course, an annual report. So that would be the basics of things that you want to have. Hello? Is there? Okay. And then the next, of course, would be gathering information for a grant application. Because your grant writer is going to need all the following items, have them in updated form, and be ready to attach them to your grant application or download them to an online grant portal. So your EIN number, your IRS determination letter, those, of course, once you have them, those are in place. But then every year you're going to need to update your list of officers and board members with their community affiliations. That's very important to be able to demonstrate to a prospective funder. And some are asking for a breakdown of demographics to make sure that you are, that your governing body, that your leadership represents your community. Same is true for your staff, your key staff members, their demographics. Have your current audited financials and your 990s available for your grant writers, your current operating budget, your project budget, and again, your annual report, so that all of that is ready for your foundations to have available.
We found that sometimes the national funders are particularly focused on demographics. It seems to be something that they're more and more aware of, and so that can be a holdup if you haven't done that in the past.
That's it. As Robin said, that is something that we are seeing more and more often, a direct question about demographics of both your board and your staff. And I guess the other comment I'd add to that is that occasionally you may not have great diversity, but you may have a reason for that. It may be your geographic location or other factors, but it's certainly something you should be willing to discuss, and you should know your numbers. You should have that on hand. Oh, what happened? I'm sorry,
There you go.
okay. So this is an important question as you get ready to go into talking to national funders. What makes your organization unique? Because that's what they're going to be asking is, why should we fund your organization over the many others other applicants that we see? An important one is, are you filling a gap? Are you providing a service no one else provides, or serving a population or a community that no one else serves? I can offer a real quick example about that. There were in the Northern Kentucky area, there was a nonprofit that was working in the area of hunger relief, and they were gathering food. They were basically a food rescue. They were taking surplus food, providing a safe way to store it, refrigerate it as needed, and then other nonprofits could come to them for that food, for food pantries, other kinds of hunger relief programs. They were aware of two neighborhoods that had no full service grocery store. And so there was two neighborhoods that also had high poverty levels and lack of transportation, no good public transit. They decided that the way they could serve those people was with a mobile food pantry. A mobile food pantry needs a lot more immediate staffing for that event than they could provide. So they partnered with a group of churches who provided the volunteers. So that was a strong collaboration. They were filling a gap. They were serving an underserved community, and they were also collaborating. And they were successful in first attracting regional funding and then some national level funding for that project. Innovation is another area where if you can demonstrate innovation, that can be something that sets your organization apart. So I think Robin had an example about innovation.
Just an organization that I've worked with that again, it had a food pantry, but one of the things that they were noticing is that sometimes the fresh produce wasn't being taken because people didn't quite know what to do with it. And so one of the things they did was start a cooking class for shoppers that came to the market, and then they would use some of the fresh produce that was available in the market and show people how to cook with it and what to make with it. And they found then that the produce was being used much more readily. So adding the cooking element. And one of the things they would do is also give all of the participants in the cooking class a crock pot if they didn't have one, so that they could make these meals and have them available in the crock pot.
And through those collaborations, these nonprofits were able to extend the reach of their mission, and that became attractive to national level funders. They also began with regional funders, so that when they went to the national level, they were able to demonstrate not only collaborations and filling a gap, but they had local support as well.
Is this mine, Carol?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Playing tag team here. Collaborations, I think, first of all, many national funders will explicitly ask for collaborations. and even on local applications, for example, they will ask, who are you collaborating with? But I think they become even more important at the national level. So one of the things that collaborations can do, obviously, is increase the project's impact. Is, for example, the one that Carol talked about with the mobile food pantry. Another thing that collaboration can offer is increased access to resources and expertise. For example, if you have a great idea for something, but maybe it involves some research, and nobody on your team is particularly prepared to do extensive research on something, or even if your project needs to have independent evaluation and you don't have an evaluator, then perhaps partnering with a local university or some organization that does evaluations is a way to get that expertise that you may not have in-house. So that you can, and I think one of the things that Carol, when we and I were talking about when we were preparing all of this, one of the things that tends to happen perhaps more at the national level than at the local level is that they tend to be looking more for those credentials of a PhD or something like that, or somebody that has, if you're going to be doing something with social work, they want to make sure that you've got an MSW involved and so forth. So sometimes that may seem snobbish, and the people with experience don't necessarily have all of those degrees, but at the national level, they can be persuasive. So it's worth maybe partnering with an organization that can provide that kind of high-level expertise that will catch the eye of those national funders. The other reason I think that foundations generally, and particularly national foundations, talk about the need for collaboration is that they want to make sure that there's not duplication of service within a particular area. And so rather, if, for example, there is a competition for funding and there are 3 organizations in the same city that are doing kind of the same thing, all applying separately, that's going to look very different from the 3 organizations coming together and putting in one really strong application. I think next slide. So a little disclaimer for this slide, and that is that really you could do a whole seminar or webinar in and of itself for how to do strong partnerships with other organizations. So this is a very high level list, and I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but if you have questions at the, later, then we can get back to that. So the first thing is to make sure that you have an alignment around a shared mission. That's sort of, without that, you're not going to get very far. So that's the first basic thing. The next thing is to start holding joint planning sessions. And I think I know at organizations where they have an idea, they want to do something, and they need a partner, and they sort of have everything all planned out, and then they go to the partner and say, will you do this with us? And that's not the best way to go about partnering with an organization. It's much better to identify an organization that is aligned with you, have a high-level idea, and then start working together to figure out how to make it happen, rather than you trying to figure it out all by yourself and go to them at the end. So you start having these planning sessions. You're going to try to identify overlapping programming where you might work together. And then once you have done that, if you have an idea in mind of what you want to accomplish, then you need to articulate what the outcomes will be and how you're going to measure them. Another thing that you need to do, perhaps especially with a partner as opposed to internally, because you really have to do those outcomes and measures even if you're doing it by yourself, but you have to make sure that you both agree, that both partners agree that these are the outcomes and this is how we're going to measure. And then the next thing is to define the roles and responsibilities. Who's going to do what, so that it's very clear. And often organizations will create a formal memorandum of understanding, an MOU. It's not always necessary, but some organizations will want to do that. And sometimes funders will ask for something like that. It's something you can add as an attachment at the end of an application, usually to show that this is something that is really well articulated and accepted at even the high levels of both organizations. In the process of creating, deciding who's going to do what, you'll want to figure out what the competitive strengths are of each organization, and obviously work towards those. Let the strong one lead where it's strong. It's important to be transparent. It's not helpful if one of the organizations is gathering its data and then doesn't want to share. Obviously, that doesn't make for a very good partnership. And financials need to be shared too. And then the last thing is to establish clear lines of communication and decision-making. Probably all through the planning phase, you're going to have regular meetings to figure out all these things. But even after the project is started, then you need to have regularly scheduled meetings, whether monthly or bi-monthly or whatever the project requires, but to make sure that you are continuing to be on the same page. And it's usually helpful for each organization to have at least have one designated liaison. It doesn't mean that people can't talk to each other about specific things, but if there's a question, there needs to be one person in charge of on each side so that they know who you can go to when you have questions.
When Robin and I were preparing, I'll just jump in and Robin shared an anecdote that I thought was helpful. There was a nature preserve, a local nature preserve that wanted to add an educational component, an educational program. And they did what Robin has just described. They sought out partnerships with local school districts and teachers. And through that process, they got not only achieved a collaboration and a strong partnership, but they were able to learn what teachers wanted to see in an educational program at this nature preserve. So the result was they had a successful program because the teachers wanted to bring classes to the nature preserve for that programming. So how do you find the national funders? Where do you look? There are some really effective tools available. One is Candid, GuideStar, and of course there are the foundation websites. But before you even start looking at foundation websites, you can use tools like Candid and GuideStar to identify funders that you may not know of yet, but you can use the search tools to find national funders that have a shared mission with your organization. The good news is that if you live in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area, there are some free resources to get into those search tools. The Hamilton County Library, Cincinnati's public library, has the ability, you can go there and use Foundation Directory online, which is Candid, GuideStar. If you live in Northern Kentucky, the Kenton County Library at the Erlanger branch offers the same thing. You do need to go into their library building and use their computers, but you can make an appointment and go and do that. And then you are able to identify the organizations that are going to align with your mission and with your programming.
I believe also that the Hamilton County Public Library periodically runs a free webinar on how to use Candid if you're not familiar with that for some reason. And
They
there's a
do.
research, there's a research librarian there that is knowledgeable and willing to help if you have questions when you're there.
They do an excellent job, and I believe they have a series of tutorials that are accessible through their website. So if you go to both of those libraries' websites, you can get the specific information you need to make use of those resources. Now, this may get a little tricky. I'm going to try to share how to profile a funder's priorities. So hang in here with us while we move to a different document here. Let me see. I need to. Okay.
There it is.
There it is. Okay. Success. Good. This is a brief outline of how to profile foundation. This is a profile that Ashley Roundtree did. We profiled the George Gund Foundation. Some of you may be familiar with it. But let me see here if I can move this. These are some of the things you're going to want to look for. After you've identified foundation, you think it might be a fit for your nonprofit, might be a fit for a grant application. You're, of course, going to want to look at their giving focus, who they want to support, and this children, youth, economically disadvantaged people, the kinds of giving focus they have, their application process, certainly. How long does it take to get a grant? What are the application deadlines? The people associated with it, the different program officers, and then this is helpful to know, recent grants. Who have they funded in recent years that might be like you? And then how to contact them. I will share that when we were examining, when we were researching this foundation for a client, it looked like a fit. This was an organization that served youth, especially economically and disadvantaged youth. It looked like this foundation was going to be a fit. Even though they were in Cleveland and that was their prime geographic focus, when we looked at recent grants, they had funded across a number of states. Looked like a fit. I highlighted in yellow a situation that they required a statement on climate change. And while the nonprofit we were working with certainly supported environmental sustainability, they did not have a strong statement about climate change or other environmental issues, and that became a real stumbling block. They just couldn't come up with that requirement, and so it ended up not being a good fit for this particular nonprofit. But you can see there's a range of things this foundation will consider and things that they want to support. So, in another situation, that could be a great fit for someone. You get back to our original slides here. Okay. Um, so after you have gone through that process, you've analyzed the funders' priorities, their funding history, and taken a look at some of their decision makers. You're ready to really make a decision about whether your organization aligns with their mission, because that's when you're successful. When an organization is going to carry out the kinds of work that the foundation wants to fund, that the funder's mission is to further these causes. And if your organization aligns with that, then you're in a much better position to have your application approved. So you need to look, what are the funder's goals? Does your project advance those goals? So you're going to want to look at their preferences, find out who the recent grantees are, and also very helpful to find out the average size of their grants, because you're going to want to make sure that what you are proposing is a fit for them. So at that point, interestingly enough, with national funders, sometimes the mistake you can make is asking for too little rather than too much. I think we're all used to talking with national or with local funders who simply can't fund large project budgets. But with some national funders who have greater resources, a lot of times they don't want to fund a small project. They want to have a bigger impact with the grants that they make. So that's something you're going to want to find out as you
Which
are.
is another reason that you may want to look at collaboration, because
Exactly.
what you would ask for, what each of those three organizations that are doing the same thing would ask for individually, if you put that all together, it might get you more into the range where the funder is going to be more interested. They don't want to have to manage a bunch of little grants. They'd rather have big ones.
So as we said, use a template to organize your work, to make sure that you've gathered the key information about each funder, have that organized and accessible. First of all, organized and accessible so that internally you are ready to make a decision about going forward with a grant. You have that information on hand so that you can talk with collaborating partners, and you're just ready. You have the information at hand. You have the information you need to make a good decision about how to proceed. And I think Robin and I discussed this a lot. You really need to plan ahead. Start now, look at your funders, because if you wait to hear an announcement or see a news release that a national funder is going to issue an RFP, that request for proposal is probably going to come out 4 to 8 weeks in advance of the grant deadline. And looking back at all the different steps we've described, if you wait for the RFP, you don't have time to do that work before the deadline. You have to have done the work, and then you're ready when the RFP is announced to get down to the business of actually writing the grant.
One thing
Robin,
you can, one thing you can do is see if this is something that they do an RFP annually for. And if you weren't aware of it and now you are, you don't have time this year, but you can verify that it's likely to come up next year, in which case you now have a year to plan for it. And sometimes the best decision is to say not yet.
Correct. And a lot of times it may not be the same exact RFP, but the foundation, the national funder, is going to work within sort of a range of mission activities. And so their next RFP is likely to be a fit. If you're well aware of the work they're doing, that next RFP is likely to be a good opportunity for you. The other thing that I'm observing is that more funders are sort of sticking with a grants focus. They are committing maybe not multi-year grants to one project, but they are funding within a project area over time. So that's another reason to do your planning now and be ready for the next RFP. So this is often a tough one. How do you get your foot in the door? How do you open up that relationship with a national level funder? More and more of the national level foundations are publishing newsletters or blogs. If they do, subscribe, find out what they're up to, read what they're writing about the work that they're doing. If they're on social media, either follow the funder's account or follow some of the program officers who might be well-acknowledged experts within that field. The program officers and other decision makers, they are a great source to know, kind of what work are they doing. And this is a great time to ask questions about their work. That can be a helpful way to let them know that you're doing the same kind of work. It's very recently, an organization that I'm working with found out about their area of work is increasing access to healthcare. They found out about this was a national corporate foundation, and that corporation was very interested in preventing chronic disease. And the nonprofit we were working with wanted to add a nutrition program that would help prevent chronic diseases, obesity, diabetes, and other things. We found out about this national corporate foundation and found out that, yes, they did fund in the nutrition area. And as we worked farther along through their website, we learned that what they really wanted to fund was diabetes care, which the organization we were working with did not do diabetes care at all. But when I got in touch with the program officer and asked about it and their programming, I got an email back that said, yes, we do fund nutrition programs because we consider that to be prevention of type 2 diabetes. So we were eligible to apply. The application's still pending, so I don't know if it was successful or not, but we did have a clarifying question that helped introduce us to that national foundation.
The only thing I would add in terms of reaching out to program officers is don't ask them a question that is already in their frequently asked questions page,
yes,
or something like that. I mean, that simply makes you annoying and flags you as somebody who didn't do your research. So it needs to be a question that is a clarifying question, not something that you could have probably figured out on your own.
Yes, it needs to be a clarifying question. As Robin said, it needs to indicate that you've done your homework, and it needs to be relevant to their grant making process too. So if you ask a good question, I guess ask a good question. Use your connections. You never know when your board member or a major donor might be helpful to you. Even your volunteers, especially a volunteer who's really committed to your cause, they may have a connection that you can use. Again, If you know any current grantees, they can help you become known to a national funder. And you can also network by attending conferences, getting on a webinar like this one. There are some national funders that offer webinars on different topics. And that's a great way to become known to them, is by being on one of their webinars. What you want to demonstrate in all of this is that you are doing the work that they say they want to fund. You're looking for that mission alignment as you go through this process. And I guess the other part of it I would emphasize, and Robin may want to chime in here, is that you are looking to open a relationship. And a relationship means that you're both listening and speaking to each other. You're communicating about the work that you have in common. Robin, I think, did you want to comment on building impactful and sustainable projects?
I'm trying to figure out where I am here. I think you were the one who was going to talk about local support. I think we frequently foundations will look to see whether you have other support. They often don't want to be the only funder for something, and even if they're the primary funder for a particular program, they want to know that you have a strong base of local support. And generally, they also want to know that you're not totally dependent on grant support. They really would like to see a distribution of support across different kinds of funding, so individuals and that sort of thing, as well as grants.
Correct. And I think especially if you are a first-time applicant to a larger foundation, they're looking for that strong base of local support as a way of it's a way, if you have that strong base of support, it is a way to demonstrate to a larger funder that you are a credible grantee. That I think that there's sort of this subconscious question of, well, if the local people aren't supporting you, why should we at the national level support you? They want to know that that in your hometown, you are doing the work that they want to see done.
Also, national funders frequently will not fund multiple years in a row, whereas there may be a local foundation or several local foundations that have been giving to you regularly over a long period of time. And that helps demonstrate that you're a sustainable organization.
Right.
So in terms of building your case, measurable goals are, again, this is another one that you could probably do a whole seminar or webinar on, but the basics are that you need to focus on the impact on recipients versus what you want to do. And that you probably need to consider immediate and longer term impact as so that even though the grant may be for a year, that you have a longer goal in mind for all of this. I don't know how many of you are familiar with logic models. I think, is that the next one, Carol? Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many of you are familiar with logic models? I find them particularly helpful because you might have a column that shows, all the resources that you have gathered in order to make the program happen, and then what it is you're going to do would be maybe the next column. So if what I'm going to do is provide food in a food pantry, then the next column might be how many people I'm going to serve. That would be the output. But the impact is how it's going to help the people that got the food, not how many people you served or what the weight of the food was, or that sort of thing. Those are outputs. The impact is going to be people having a less food insecurity. And if you're, teaching them how to cook with the food from the food pantry, then you have, more nutritious meals, or however you want to measure those sorts of things. But the impact on the recipients is where you want to make your focus, as opposed to what you want to do. And then I mentioned this earlier, actually, in terms of collaboration, but demonstrate strong project leadership. They will want to, most national funders will want to know who's doing the project and what experience do they have. And they, in running that kind of a project, and do they have the expertise, whether it's through years of experience or through educational background, or a combination of those things. And again, if you don't have that expertise that might make you stand out, looking for a partner that might be able to provide that expertise can be really helpful. So we are nearing the end of our presentation here. Essentially, what we hope you've gathered is that you have a vision for what you want to do, and that vision aligns with the funder. That vision comes from an issue in the community that needs to be solved, and you're going to solve it. In the case for support, you're going to need to explain why it should be you, and why now. And then you have a plan for how you're going to do it. You describe the plan, the project itself, the actions that'll be taken, the costs, and then you have a call to action for, what you need them to do to make this all happen. Carol, do you have something to add?
Well, the only thing, and again, it may not be that you're going to solve a problem. You may have identified a need, or even a unique opportunity in your community that is worthy of funding at this time. An opportunity may help you explain the why now. It may be that that there is another initiative in your area that your collaboration or that your project would support, that would achieve even greater impact for your community if you were able to seize that opportunity at this time. So again, it goes back to making sure that you've aligned your mission, that what you want to do is going to be needed, and a compelling case for support. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing the PowerPoint, and we will
send a copy to people.
It will be available. And are there any questions?
Carol, there was a question I'm sorry if I'm saying Noon, or not, I'm not sure I'm saying your name right, but it was written, we have all the components mentioned, and maybe you're with Price Hill in Cincinnati, and we also thrive on partnerships, but how do we make national funders interested in our work? Could you respond to that?
Okay. It gets back to, again, doing some of those things we talked about. subscribe to those funders' newsletters. If they post something on social media, that might be an opportunity to comment on it. And there are even a couple of national funders I've seen now, Lisa, that do not issue RFPs. But on their website, if you scroll through it, they will have a place that you can click and it says introduce yourself. And that's your chance for a short written elevator speech kind of introduction to that national funder. Another part of it, I think, is doing the basics of communications correctly, making sure that that if you do a newsletter, it's current, it's up to date, so that if a national funder is aware of your local work, that when they start looking at you, at your website, at any other public communication about you, that what they see is relevant and compelling, that they're looking at a nonprofit organization that is worthy of funding, that you're doing the basics correctly. Judith Warren.
I just would add or emphasize again that really getting a national funder interested in your work is all about building that relationship. And it's basically if you don't know anybody, if you've identified one or more funders that you think should be interested in you, then you need to figure out how you can get connected to it. And it might be finding, a webinar that they're doing or following them on social media, some of those other things that Carol talked about. It might be that they're funding somebody else in your area, and you know somebody from that organization, and that organization can introduce you to a program officer that they've worked with. It might be a board member that knows somebody, it might be a volunteer, but basically it's all about networking as much as you can.
I saw a question about any shifts in national funders due to changes in DEI. I don't know if Robin would agree, but I have not seen a de-emphasis of DEI. I think they are still interested in, we're seeing questions around demographics. They're very interested in seeing diversity on your board, diversity in your leadership. And I've even seen questions around, does your board or do your senior leaders reflect the lived experiences of the people you serve? So that, I think, is a helpful thing to keep in mind, that funders want to know that you're carrying out their work. The funders don't do direct programming for people. You do that work. And so if you can show them that you're serving the people they want to, that their cause wants to support, then that's the case you need to make. That's part of your compelling case for support.
I think while I'm talking in generalities, but it, in some ways, the federal's de-emphasis on DEI, some funders have doubled down on it. I mean, it's almost like they've gone the other way. Not all of them, because a lot of them were already committed to it. And because they're private, they're not subject to those things that the federal agencies are.
And I guess it would be helpful if and maybe we didn't state this enough at the beginning, is that we are discussing private sector national funders, not federal grants, federal government grants, that this is the private sector.
Carol and Robin, I encourage anyone to ask any questions in the chat. Feel free, and we'll make sure we see those. While we're waiting, maybe for some more. You mentioned at one point, make sure you ask good questions. Well, what might be some good questions for them to ask? That is, obviously make sure you're checking the FAQs that may already be answered, but what might be something that is relevant on a general basis? I know that's maybe a hard question, but just curious.
Or a clarifying kind of question. Um, yeah, make sure it is unique to your situation, and that can be the purpose of asking the question, is that it's a chance to show why you're unique. You might be describing and opening the door of a discussion about how you're filling a gap. For example, if a national funder says that they want to support LGBTQ youth, let's say that's one of their funding interests. And you are a very small local nonprofit, but you're the only one in your area that provides a clothing closet for adolescents who are questioning their gender identity. Querying them about that project might help make them aware of you. And that's assuming, of course, it's not something like that isn't directly stated in their frequently asked questions or in their grant guidelines. You should be going through those in detail. But if you have a sort of a unique twist on things, that can be a way to ask a question and clarify your eligibility to apply. Do you think that answers it, Lisa? Yeah.
Yeah, or Robin, do you have any other
Well,
thoughts?
I think sometimes I've gotten in touch with program officers because I'm looking at something that we think we want to do, and we're not sure if it's going to be an issue. So you want to make sure that in general you're aligned with them. But one of the things that you're thinking about adding to your budget or to your to your list of things that you're going to accomplish, you're not sure if it's within their scope. And so you would call and say, we're generally doing this. Would this also be eligible or something like that?
And it might be a budget item that it's not clear from all their frequently asked questions or their giving guidelines. It might not be clear, for example, that they would fund one of the line items that you want to put in your project budget, and you could ask that clarifying question.
But anytime you ask a question before you submit the application, you then begin to develop at least some recognition, so that when that proposal comes in and they read about it, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that person asked me a question. It's not a huge thing, but it's a way to begin to get a foot in the door. And once you've asked one question, as others come up, then you feel more free asking other ones too.
Are there any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Rachel, I don't know if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, if there are no other questions, maybe I'll ask Carol, Robin, Lisa to just stay on the line for a couple minutes as folks hop off, give final chance for anyone to speak up. You can go ahead and just unmute yourself or use the chat. So I'd say we'll give like 2 or 3 minutes for that. But if not, I want to apologize to those of you who came in a few minutes late. We had a couple issues with the link that was sent out in the reminder. So really appreciate the patience while we tackled that at the beginning of the webinar. Also want to let everyone know that the slides and the recording will go out in a follow-up email probably tomorrow. It'll come from Interact. So if you missed anything at the beginning, hopefully that you can fill any holes that way. But really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate Carol, Robin, all of your insights and expertise, Lisa and Colleen for your help setting this up, and just everyone for taking the time to be here today. So thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone who joined.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time and your attention. And um, every time I talk to someone in the grants community, I always learn something. So I thank you for that opportunity as well. Questions and other things it always sparks an idea, and a conversation among ourselves, I think, often is a great way to strengthen the work that we do.
I would also, as we close, put in a plug for the Grant Professionals Association. I know there's a good chapter in the Cincinnati area. If you're not connected with them, it's a great way to network with other people that are doing the work that you're doing. And if you have additional questions, there are people there with expertise. They frequently have a funder panel. A couple times a year, they usually have a funder panel where you can go and actually meet program officers. They're usually local ones, but sometimes the local one may be like a bank or somebody that's local, but they have connections to national funders at a different level, and so you can start at the local level and get connected through your local program officer to somebody at the national level. So all of those are ways to just keep working on that networking. That's really the bottom line in terms of trying. I will say that at one point in my career, I sent in an absolutely cold application to a national funder and was dumbfounded when I got funded. I was delighted, of course. What happened, though, was that we got 2 more years of funding from this organization, and each year it was for more money because we had started that relationship. So relationships are still the best way to go.
Yep. And Robin, we had one question come in where someone just
Okay.
asked to clarify that organization. You were talking about the Grant Professionals Association.
Grant Professionals Association, yes. And they have the national headquarters is in Kansas City, but there are local chapters all over the country, and there's a very strong one in Cincinnati.
Yep. And I believe that's just the Grant Professionals Association of Greater Cincinnati. Yep.
Right.
You Google it, you'll find them. And I will say that Robin is 100% correct. I attended a funders panel, and I wasn't the grant writer that did this, but another grant writer was speaking to one of the funders, the local funders on the panel, describing their work. And the local funder, who was with a local bank, said, you need to find my counterpart in, I forget which city. They have 2 charitable trusts that are held in this other city, but they fund in Cincinnati because of family connections to that charitable trust. So sure enough, they reached out at a more national level and found 2 good, strong prospects to fund their work.
Awesome. Thank you, Carol. Again, thank you everyone for joining. If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and start logging off and moving on, but really appreciate everyone's time today.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Mhm.